Welcome to Studio 58A Live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us online wherever you are. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and comments so we can put them to our guests. And like how we have your attention, just do us the same favor we always ask. Share this video with a friend or 2 or 5,000 so we can have a lively discussion. Now, according to experts, Jamaica experiences on average some 200 earthquakes each year, and though the majority of them go unnoticed by humans, several occur which are significant enough to raise anxiety and fears among members of the public. And with information traveling at the speed of light through social media, panic can spread very quickly. That said, the best way to combat anxiety and panic is with preparation and planning. And here today to provide preparation tips for you and me are representatives of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM. We have with us Marketing Manager David Nation and Director of Information and Training, Delmaris White. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, wonderful. Now, as part of efforts to raise awareness, in January, ODPEM undertakes a special awareness campaign. Can you just let people know what ODPEM does every January to raise awareness about earthquakes and tsunami, which are just as important, even though we tend not to pay it as much mind? But over to you guys.
Sure. Every January, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, through its local office and its partners, launches its Earthquake Awareness Week, month, quarter. What we want to do is take that time to highlight that specific hazard, because as you know, earthquakes have no season. They just can occur pretty much any time of day or night. So we use that particular time to remind persons to be prepared. This particular year, 2019, we combined earthquake and tsunami awareness under the theme, when an earthquake strikes, be bold, drop, cover, and hold.
Drop, cover, and hold. All right. Now, as far as earthquakes are concerned, when I was doing research preparing for this interview, I understand there's so much that we all need to keep in mind as we think about earthquakes. There's what you do before, what you do during, and what you do afterwards. So let's take it step at a time. Before the earthquake comes on, what are some of the things that we need to be keeping in mind?
All right, so before an earthquake, as I said before, it doesn't necessarily have a season, but what we can do to prepare is what we call a hazard hunt. What we ask persons to do in your home or your office, just take a walk, then see what could fall if an earthquake was supposed to happen. So you know Jamaicans have their whatnot full of glass and all the things on the higher shelf. Move those to the lower shelf. So if and when an earthquake does occur, they won't fall and cause damage to you. In your office space, look at your desk, more specifically under your desk. If I were supposed to see the earth shaking or feel it, the vibrations, can I fit under my desk? If you can't, that means you need to move that box, your bag, ladies, those big handbags, you can't keep them under your desk, the boxes, those type of things. You want to move them away and have a space that you can get under your desk quickly and as best as I always say, calmly. It's easy for me to say this, but I always remind persons, just remain calm. But
when you see the earth shaking, it's kind of hard to stay calm. But I mean, I understand exactly what you're talking about. I'm talking about, like, I would imagine knowing your exit routes and so on, the emergency exits, that kind of thing is an important. Elaborate on that. Sure.
So again, the same idea of the hazard hunt. So specifically for those who live near the coastline, who live in very congested areas, if an earthquake was supposed to occur and there's damage and I need to leave my office space, what is the quickest route out of my office in terms of the doors? When I get through the doors in terms of the area, road networks, what is the quickest way out? If you can't make it out via car, walking, how can I get from point A to point B, knowing your meet-up points as well for your families as well. So you happen to be on your way home from work, where do we meet? Do we meet under the palm tree? Do we meet under the clock tower? You should have this kind of discussion with your family as well to say, in the event of, we meet at point A or point B.
And just to add specifically, for some sections of the corporate area or even sections in Portmore, they have an evacuation plan. So there would be identified routes that they're required to take in the event of an earthquake, and so you can ask your municipal corporation, for your routes if it's mapped out, and so you'll have an appreciation for where it is you need to be or where you can go.
Now, what do I do during, as you mentioned before, drop, cover, and hold? But elaborate for me, what do we do during the earthquake itself, when the earth starts to shake and we start to panic and all that stuff?
So you feel the vibration, and most persons stop and say, what is that? Once you can identify and say it's not a truck passing, it's not a big speaker box pounding music, you can identify it's an earthquake. You want to drop, which means to get as low as possible and get under a sturdy table. If you can't get under a sturdy table, you want to get in between a door and brace. And when we say brace, you don't mean put your hands side to side, we mean put your back to one end of the doorway, hold on tight to it as well. So that is the bracing position. So in terms of drop, cover and hold, you're going to get under your desk and you're going to hold on to a leg of the desk. Why we say hold on is because when the earth is shaking, things are going to move. So you might just be under the desk and the desk goes one way and you go the other way, and of course leave yourself exposed. So you want to drop, cover and of course hold on until the shaking has stopped, and then you proceed from there.
And just as important as what to do is what not to do during the earthquake. What should we avoid doing when we feel the earth shaking? I mean, panic sets in and people tend to do, you just respond, you just react, you just do what your mind tells you to do, which might not necessarily be the safest thing in that particular instance. So what should we not do?
We tell people not to go under a glass table.
Okay.
Some of us have glass tables around, right? And also David explained the position in the door jamb. It is highlighted that it's one of the safest places because of the sturdiness, the door jamb. And so he's explained that you want to make sure that your back is on one side and you're holding on tight. We're advising persons you're holding on, as David explained, because we don't want you moving with the furniture when it does. Also, you're in high-rise buildings. We don't want you running while the earth is shaking or moving around, because that's probably going to be very dangerous, because things could fall on you or you could trip over. So we want for you to secure yourself before you move off, and that is when you realize the shaking has stopped.
Additionally as well, for 2019 with the young persons, everybody has a camera phone, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, they want to take pictures. So I want to remind persons, during the earthquake, put the phones away and protect yourself.
And you just look into the camera.
All right, so I want to remind all the persons, even though we're live on Facebook now, during any type of disaster, just put your phones away. You want to secure yourselves and protect your life and your family as well. So for an earthquake specifically, it's drop, cover, and hold on. Once earth has stopped shaking, if you want to grab your phone, you can, and calmly, I want to say this again, calmly exit the building, and then you go to your assembly point. So most businesses and office places have an area where you're going to assemble after a disaster. Specifically for an earthquake, those places tend to be open, away from trees, power lines, and away from the building as well. You assemble there, and from the HR, your safety wardens will then do their roll calls to make sure everybody's there. If it requires emergency assistance, they'll call the fire department, ambulances. When they get there, based on what has happened, you can either say, okay, Tom Brown is not here, so he may either be inside the building, or because everyone has identified their body. So for me, Miss White is my buddy. So if she's not there, I can say Miss White is not here, she's gone to a meeting, so you don't have to spend time looking for her because she's not there.
Right. Which brings me to another point, but I'm going to get there soon.
Sure.
Now, they say that an earthquake typically lasts for a minute thereabouts. It might not feel like it might feel like an hour thereabouts, but it only lasts for a minute. But then as soon as the earthquake stops, you started elaborating on it, what do we do immediately after the earthquake stops, especially in circumstances, for example, where you might find yourself in the dark?
Sure.
Like that.
So what we advise persons through our preparedness talk is have what you call an emergency kit. So in the emergency kit, we have your flashlights, your radios, batch operated radios, of course, your documents as best as possible, things that you can just quickly grab and go. So let's just say you're at home. In the dark, you have an appreciation of how your home looks, but after an earthquake, things may have toppled over. So you want to calmly, slowly maneuver your way through your home to wherever that emergency kit is, or where you keep your flashlights. From there, you can turn them on, and then you make your way through or out of your home as well. Depending on how strong the earthquake is, you can have an idea of, based on how you build your home, if you see any cracks, you can say, okay, it feels like it's going to be okay, but just you want to go outside, just to be on the safe side. If you want to call the ambulance, call other persons, based on what has happened during the earthquake, you can do that. As it relates to your office space, as I was saying earlier, you have your assembly points, HR has a role to play, your safety wardens, everybody knows what they're supposed to do afterwards. So you do your roll call, you have your body, you know where your body is. If your body is not there at work that day, or is not with you, it could be inside the building. From there, once the fire persons have arrived, you can say, okay, we have 100 staff members, 20 are at a meeting, 10 are at lunch, the rest are all here, so we're all good to go from there, we're all accounted for.
I want to add to that, the assembly point for offices, it's standard. So David explained that it is away from the building in a cleared area, away from power lines and trees and all of that. Usually when you're at home, we don't have an assembly point at home.
Right.
The earthquake has just happened and you're in the dark and you're not sure and you reach for your flashlight and you leave your house. We advise that you try to leave the building so that if an aftershock, you're not in a structure that may topple. But you need to now identify where in your yard, at your place, in your apartment, in your townhouse is a clear place for you to go and assemble or to just wait it out to see what's happening. Because what we want persons to do is to recognize that structures can fail, and a lot of times people get injured from earthquakes because of the structure. So that's why we're advising persons to move away from the structure and then check to see if it is sturdy that you can go back into the house. So that is why we say after the drop cover hold on, you leave the structure that may fail to go to a clear area to make an assessment if you can go back in or if you need to leave that area. So for the building, for the offices, they know. But for your home, you need to identify with family. Are we going to go into Miss Mary parking lot across to the park? Where are you going to go? You need to know that.
Now, in terms of being away from, like you mentioned, you're out, let's say you're on the road, for example, you're in your car or something, you feel the earth shaking, you feel something. Is there a different kind of protocol? Is there a different kind of approach that you should be taking with regards to going back to your home or back to the office or wherever? What should you do if you're away from home and you find yourself in the middle of an earthquake?
Typically, if you're driving, depending on the magnitude of the earthquake, you may not feel it. Most persons, when they're moving around, if it's a minor tremor, you don't feel it. But if you happen to be driving and you notice the car is shaking, what we advise persons to pull over to the side of the road. When you're pulling over now, you're going to not pull over under a tree, under a light post, under an overpass. You want to pull over somewhere that is clear and stay inside the vehicle. Once earth has stopped shaking again, you want to tune into the radio, try and find news station, GIS, or whichever radio station that can provide with an update as well. And from there, you want to make your checks as well. You can call your family to see if they're okay. If you're outside in an open space, the procedure is similar. It's drop, cover, and hold, but again, it's away from buildings and trees. So you want to kind of crouch down and cover the nape of your neck as well. Because again, if something was supposed to hit you, you have to protect your spine in some sense. And again, you want to wait it out outside and then do your checks on the outside. Sometimes persons, when the earthquake has begun, they run inside. As White has said, sometimes when you're running into a building or running during the earthquake, things may fall and cause damage to you. So you want to stay outside if you're outside, stay inside if you're inside, and then from there, after the earth has stopped shaking, you proceed on the outside and meet up with your family. Now,
you made something very important, which is aftershocks. How do you know? I mean, we know that after the initial earthquake, people might think, okay, I'm safe, it's done, I can just go back or just, wait a couple of minutes and then go back. But aftershocks tend to occur. I don't know quite how regularly after the initial quake itself, but they occur and they can, if something was only slightly damaged before, it becomes even more damaged afterwards. Right. How do you treat with that when you find that aftershocks? How do you treat with aftershocks essentially?
All right, so the point we made earlier about leaving the structure is because we recognize there could be aftershocks. So if you stay where you were in a building, it could become more compromised. So it's the clear area that protects you because there's nothing to fall on you. So even if there's an aftershock, you would have left the building and be outside where it's clear. You're feeling it and watching the earth to make sure you're not in pockets that could cause problems. But it's the checks that you do to determine your safety where you are. So individuals have a responsibility to know their environment, their structure, where they're located, what are the areas that are compromised so that they know their risks. So it is to stay away from buildings. So aftershocks won't impact you significantly if after the first shake, you would have left the structure you're in and it be in a clear open area, field, away from the things that could fall on you. So that's really what you want to communicate. And I know that
aftershocks can occur even as much as like an hour, even maybe the following day. So it would essentially the same preparedness.
Same procedure. If you went back in the building and you feel an aftershock and it is either stronger or not as strong, you do the same procedure. Drop, cover, hold. Leave again if you have to make sure, because you don't know, the built environment is sometimes to our detriment in an earthquake because it is the built environment that can topple and cause injury.
All right. Now, earthquake awareness or preparedness tips for the vulnerable groups, the children, the elderly, and the disabled. What kind of advice can you provide for those particular categories of persons? All
right. So in terms of for the children and the elderly, it's the same procedure: drop, cover, and hold. For someone who is combined to a wheelchair, it's lock, cover and hold. So you want to lock the wheels of the wheelchair in place, so again, the wheelchair doesn't move ahead of you. So you want to lock the wheels, you want to crouch over and protect the nape of your neck as well. And of course, once earth has stopped shaking, unlock it and find your way outside the building as well. In terms of those persons who are visually impaired, I can't readily speak to the procedure in terms of what they would have to do, but I can check and get back to you on that particular one for the visually impaired.
No problem. Now, preparedness, as we say, is the best weapon you can have to ensure that you survive and navigate these kind of circumstances the best way possible. Now, creating a family emergency plan. Can you just go over again some of the tips that families should be considering when they want to create a plan in case there's an emergency, so they can know what to do, how they can respond, and effectively ensure that everybody makes it out safe? You know what I'm saying? Can you just give me a rundown on create, let's say a group of people sit down as a family and say, okay, we're creating this drill. Where do they start, and what should they be focusing on as they prepare it?
All right, so for the emergency plan, you want to first identify the type of hazard you're preparing for. Earthquakes don't have a sign when it's going to come. So earthquakes, you're going to treat a little bit differently. Hurricanes, you know, June to November, we can prepare for that. There's some level of warning. But for your earthquake or your family plan, you want to do the same thing. You want to look at the hazard. You want to identify, okay, how many lead time do I have? If I have no lead time, I want to have a kit, which would include flashlight, medication, those types of things. You want to have a meetup point as well. So you know, if I'm not at home, I know to meet up in Miss Mary's parking lot. I know to meet up in Tom Jones somewhere. You know where to meet up as well. You know who to call as well. I know I'm responsible for calling the ambulance, for example. You know you're responsible for calling the police. You know you're responsible for calling the fire department. So again, it's based on the hazard. You want to know what your role is. You want to know where to meet up, and you want to also have an idea of where the kit is. Everybody should know where the kit is, where to meet up. For children as well, what we want to advise the parents for children is to advise them to know their home phone number, their address, and their parents' cell or work number as well. You find a lot of kids nowadays don't know where they live, they don't know their parents' phone number, and that in a disaster can cause some problems as well.
And just to add to for your emergency plan, the kit is important. Sometimes even in that kit we have that side pocket that we have the documents that's going to be relevant that we need, our passports, our birth certificates, the title for the house, and whatever else that you need. And so everybody needs to know where it's kept in the event you're at home. But I think for me and my own family, our emergency plan speaks to where do we assemble. So the children need to know if whatever happens, you meet at the statue in the park and you stay there till somebody comes. So we all have an appreciation for where it is we're meeting up. We have the same plan for if we're at the stadium. If I drop my child to the stadium and I can't find him and his phone dies, I just drive to where we always meet up and wait there. And he knows that he's to get there and we will find each other. So that's, I think, a very important discussion you need to have with your family, because as disaster managers in an emergency, we are trying to protect the rest of Jamaica, but our family is also important. So we feel satisfied if we know they know where to meet and they're safe, so we can get to the business of keeping other people safe. So individually as a family, know what your husband is responsible for, who calls who, know where the keys are, know where the child and you and the rest of the family meet up, know who picks up grandma if she's disabled, know who packs the insulin from the fridge when we leave, and those are the discussions, individual family. So no emergency plan in a family will be identical. It will be determined on the number of persons, the disability or not, or the illness in that family. But bottom line is you must have a kit and you must have a place where you will meet in the event you can't get home.
All right, we're here talking with representatives of ODPEM, David Nation and Delmar is right there sharing with us some very, very valuable information about earthquake preparedness and what you must do to make sure that you navigate this kind of emergency situation successfully. You, all members of your family, especially those of them who may have special needs, those of them who might just need extra special attention. It's very useful. We urge you to just take advantage of this opportunity. Send in your questions, your comments. We have them right here. Let's take advantage of it. Any question you have, that we can just get answers to it right away. Now, guys, let's switch over to the topic of tsunamis. And I'm sure this will be especially useful simply because in Jamaica, as much as we've heard the warnings before, because we've not had one, knock on wood, we don't ever want to experience one, persons may not necessarily feel like they need to be as prepared as they should. So let's go through in real detail what should people be aware of when it comes to tsunamis.
All right, so I'm going to let David address the question because he wants to clarify that we have had two in the past You've had 2 tsunamis in the past, and you'll just name them and say what the geologists and the scientists have said about it.
So in terms of Jamaica's history, what actually sank the city of Port Royal was the initial earthquake and a following tsunami. So that was the first instance in Jamaica where we can actually report and say a tsunami had actually occurred in Jamaica. The second one actually happened after the 1907 earthquake. Even though the earthquake was in Kingston, we had what we call an inland tsunami in St. Anne. So those are just 2 examples of what we can refer to in Jamaica as relates to a tsunami.
So it's false to say that we've never experienced
yes,
something like that.
A little false to say that, but
go.
again, with our history education, persons at that particular point never knew what a tsunami was. A tsunami is a Japanese word. So really out of the instances in Japan and Indonesia, that's when persons really started to take note of what a tsunami was and is. In terms of preparing for a tsunami, what we advise persons to look for the natural warning signs of a tsunami. So it is feel, see, hear, and run.
Feel,
see, hear, and run.
Okay.
So I'm going to break it down. So for feel, if you happen to live close to a body of water or the coast and you feel an earthquake, a large one, don't wait. Just after you do the drop, cover, and hold, you want to leave the building and get inland, as far inland as possible, and high as well in terms of elevation. You want to see, so you see the sea receding at an unusual level. Again, don't stop and look and try to say, oh, look, this is
point
run.
out this natural
you know what I mean?
You've
You
never
run.
heard
Exactly.
Instagram, Facebook. Oh my God,
Exactly.
what's going on
Take
here?
photos.
So you want to run. You want to hear, so you hear the roar of the ocean coming back towards the land. You run again. It says feel, see, hear, and of course run. And when you say run, you want to say run inland as far as possible and also get some elevation. So if you happen to live where there is not much hills or heights, you want to get to maybe the 5th floor of a building or higher. So that way, if the wave does come, you are far above it where the water, in some instances, can pass around the building and protect, give you some level of protection.
Unless the water is powerful enough, I mean, the
and
water
not the building.
the building, you
well,
know,
yeah,
you're
but,
scared, but I mean,
that's something we want to remind. So even in Indonesia, when they had the tsunami a few weeks ago, you saw persons climbing coconut trees because of the height. They just want to try and get as far away and high as possible, height-wise. I know that in Japan, they have what they call ramps. So it's like a spiral column that literally just doesn't go anywhere. It just gives persons the elevation that they would require in the event of a tsunami. And it's so designed that the water passes through the structure so that it wouldn't actually compromise its integrity as well.
Right. So go over them again.
So it's feel, see, hear, and run.
All right. And
I want to add too, you see, we have, as a nation, the fastest runners in the world. And so I had a discussion earlier where we talked about tsunami awareness and warnings. And it's important that persons understand that outside of this huge wave that you will see in any visual posters, it's a scary situation. There's this huge wave coming and it's covering buildings and taking people and cars and stuff. We want to remind persons that the panic will set in, but we want them to get higher up than where they are. So the elevation is very important. And David mentioned it. In other countries, they have this spiral building. We have our downtown. You'll get into onto a higher floor. When we look at social media, we'll notice that for the countries who have experienced it more recently, you will see people with their cameras videotaping, but they're always at a higher elevation. So if you can allow yourself to identify, especially if you work in the harbor areas, where you would get to and where you'd want to be. You know, we talk about you need to know where you're going to be, which floor you're going to be on, so you can be one of those persons taking the photo showing us what the waves did and not compromise your own safety. So we want for you to get the elevation. If you're in a Portmore, you know, right by Rodney's Arm, there's this huge, you want to get to the higher elevation. So we're promoting that knowledge for persons who may be at risk living in the coastal areas. For tsunamis, you need to get to high elevation.
All right, I understand that. Well, when you watch cartoons and things like that, you see the tsunami as one major wave. Is it just one wave, or is it more than that come on after the when you know in silver tsunami is coming?
All right, so for a tsunami, it's actually a series of waves. So you have that initial wave that will come and break, and another one that will come. So it's a series of waves, and it's through that series of waves that the water comes further and further inland. So it's important again to get as far inland and of course as far in elevation elevation as possible. So
I understand.
5 floors or higher, or
people
about.
tend to, or you might think you see the first one come on,
And
and
you
you
realize,
survive, and then
right.
like, all right, cool, this is
Yeah.
over, I'm good now, and then there's more waves.
Right, so
Right.
it's not one wave. There's
But
a
we want
series
to
of
also
waves that
point out
come.
as well, in terms of a tsunami, sometimes there is time to warn, and others there is no time to warn. So depending on other things called tsunamis, so it could be an earthquake close to the coast, it could be a landslide close to the coast, an underwater volcano, or even recently in Indonesia, it was a volcano that erupts and the side of the volcano collapsed. That led to the sea, and it was through that collapsing of the volcano that actually triggered the tsunami. And because there was no earthquake, there was no time to really pick up and sense and send out the messages as well. So that is why we always remind persons that look for the natural warning signs. So it's feel, see, hear, and run.
You mentioned that one of the things I came across is that persons should stay away from rivers and streams that lead to the ocean. What's the significance of that?
It's a similar phenomenon in terms of any body of water that would be close to the epicenter of an earthquake in terms of how the water would actually react. So a tsunami really is a displacement of water. So think of it as when you take a pebble and you throw into a puddle. Once that stone goes down, you have the ripple effects going out as well. So that ripple effect is what causes the vibrations, and of course through the vibrations causes the water to move and then go inland or elsewhere.
And cause expand the devastation.
Right.
So to speak.
So you're likely to have waves coming back upstream, back into those waterways, and could cause damage. So that's why you need to stay away from those tributaries and those other things that could.
All right.
Find
This is
ways.
a lot of information. I hope people are getting what they need and they are and don't get complacent. I really don't want us to have a tsunami, but it doesn't hurt to know. As I said, preparedness is the best medicine to offset any kind of fear or panic or anything like that. Now, insofar as the campaign that you guys have underway, talk to us about the activities that you have started for January in terms of getting the message out there, making persons aware of earthquake and tsunami preparedness, that kind of thing.
All right, so for the campaign, Mr. White alluded to it earlier, one of our flagship events for the campaign is our Day for Schools. So our Day for Schools event took place on January 16th. It was out by Fort Charles in Port Royal. The reason why we go there is because we can actually show the students the actual impact of an earthquake. We can show them the liquefaction, the giddy house. So liquefaction really is when water somewhat compromises the integrity of the ground. It causes a quicksand effect. So the building would either sink completely or kind of tilt to one way. So you have the giddy house to represent that part of a tsunami or earthquake. You have Fort Charles now that speaks to the history of Port Royal and the artifacts around the actual property as well. You can show the kids that. So for this year, we had a total of 504 students from about 27 schools across Kingston, St. Andrews, St. Catherine, St. James, all across Jamaica that actually came to Fort Charles and actually participated in what we call a cultural exchange. So we asked the students to depict in song, dance, or a drama earthquake preparedness. And the theme this year was when an earthquake strikes, be bold, drop cover, and hold. Right.
All right, and I guess what else, are there more things planned, or is there more that are you going to be spreading the message in other ways in terms of is it a throughout the year thing? I know that you focus on it in January, but as the year goes on and progresses, are there any other plans or any other activities that we should be looking out for?
Right, so
Before we go to the other ones, probably you can complete. We had the press launch on the first day, that's the Monday. Then we had the Day for School and Day for Business.
Right,
is
so the
important.
Day for Business, what we did was we reminded the business community similarly that they should always keep in the back of their mind or in the front of their mind preparedness for an earthquake, because it really has no season. So this year what we did was we partnered with the BPO sector, the business process and outsource sector, more specifically a Loricon Halfway Tree Road. We actually went down to that particular institution and we spoke to their staff about preparing for an earthquake, what is that they need to do. So the hazard hunt, the plans, the drop cover hold in the event of an earthquake, what exactly they need to do. And through that interaction and that engagement, we're able to pretty much heighten their awareness on how to prepare for an earthquake. We actually, after that, had what we call the National Disaster Risk Management Gender Symposium. That was actually took place on the 24th of January out by UWI Mona Visitors Lodge. So at that particular forum, what we wanted to remind persons was that in a disaster, how does gender factor in? Now, persons sometimes confuse gender with women's issues, and we want to use that particular forum to remind persons that gender really, when it boils down to it, it's male or female,
Right.
and how males and females are impacted, what role they play during, before, during, and after disaster. So we had that kind of talk with persons from UTech, from UWI, the public sector and the private sector, to kind of remind them that this disaster management is not just a male-female problem, but we want to identify that as a gender, as a man or as a woman, it can impact you in different ways.
Right.
All right. You mentioned something about getting the babies, the youngsters, the toddlers. Was that part of the outreach session as well? The young ones, the infants.
Yeah, the infants came to the day for school, and
Right.
it's the basic schools, and
Right,
usually
right,
we have
right.
the high schools. And it was interesting because they came with the teachers with their lunch kits, and it's funny because sometimes it can be really hot at Port Royal and there's not a lot of seating, so they took up room in our media environment where we were showing videos, and they just camped out there all day, and they did their drop, cover, hold, and had lunch. And I think it's important for us because the point we're making is that we've started the education from a very young age.
Right.
And these are the children, like you had mentioned, for your daughter,
Right,
who will
right,
come home
right.
and tell you, Mommy, no, it's drop, cover, hold on.
Right,
So
right,
we've
right.
started early. The partnership that ODPEM has with the Ministry of Education and the schools is that they look out for a January initiative where we commemorate the earthquake that happened in Port Royal, send the students, because every year that suite of group, they'll change. And so we have to constantly remind them. And Port Royal is the perfect spot that we have had this history of this earthquake and tsunami that we can show them in real life what it is and what it means. So we have a pretty good exchange with the schools there, and it is well supported.
Right. And before we move on, I just wanted to also speak to our partners that actually assisted us for the Day for Schools. So for this particular initiative, we partner with public and private sectors. So we had the earthquake unit that's based at UWI Mona. We had the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the Jamaica Defense Force, more specifically the Coast Guard, talking to the students about what they do in a disaster. We had the Red Cross, we had NSWMA, we also had NEPA, we also had, of course, Team ODPEM there, and we had a live outside broadcast. And I also want to thank the sponsors for the event as well, because without them, we really would not be able to put on such an amazing show. So we really want to thank Wisynco Group, we want to thank Grace Kennedy Limited, and we also want to thank Continental Bakery. They provide us with sodas, well, not sodas, water, and with the Ministry of Health initiative about Jamaica Move, they provided us with some juices that were low sugar content and snacks for the students to enjoy as well on the day.
All right. Now, in terms of the message itself and earthquake, the level of earthquake awareness that you think that Jamaica has in terms of making sure that the message not just goes out but is received and well received by members of the public, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about it now? And I suppose where would you feel as comfortable, for lack of a better word, in terms to make sure that people have the level of earthquake and tsunami awareness that we would like them to?
All right, so I want to take it outside the earthquake talk and do the hurricane for just one quick second. Most persons, when they know June to November, automatically they start to prepare. They buy the extra tin goods, they start to trim their homes and do that little check to make sure if a storm does come, they are protected to some extent. That's where you want to take earthquake awareness. You want to make sure that persons, once they feel this rumbling, is drop, cover, and hold. If they're close to the ocean, it's feel, see, hear, run. So every year we want, as Ms. White said, we want to talk to the students, primary and secondary, basic as well, to remind them that this is what you're going to do, drop, cover, and hold. So as they get older and they become adults, they can impart that same knowledge to their kids, and the cycle continues. So ensure that as a country, we are on the same page, drop, cover, and hold when it comes time for an earthquake.
And I just want to add to that, for earthquake and tsunami awareness, we have a lot of grounds to cover. And I say this in my communications hat because David explained it. When you've had a hazard that people are accustomed to, they have a better appreciation for the destruction.
Right.
We have had Gilbert experience. But when you think of a Port Royal so many years ago and a downtown, we tend to, for the message, take it for granted that we're going to be well. So as a nation, I think we have to recognize that as an island state, we're at risk to some hazard. And so we have to be aware what it is, we individually, what we need to do for ourselves and our families. So for the information for tsunami, the feel, see, hear, run, we want to remind persons to just bear that in the back of your mind. We want for the message for earthquake and tsunami to be similar to what we have for the behavior, that is, for hurricane. We want it to be muscle memory. We want for you to always have a can extra of food somewhere. And we understand the economic challenges, but if you're planning for the future, you have to also be thinking of any eventuality. So it's the same behavior. So we've already planned for June to November.
Right.
Those little ones that are there is in the event of an emergency, ensure that the kit doesn't get thrown out for you to prepare for it again for June. So you always have that kit with your important documents and medication and stuff that you could grab at any point, because we are trying to build resilience for all hazards, and we want people to remember that.
And speaking of the kit as well, what you want to also remind persons, or you want to remember, is that you want to always check the kit. Meaning you want to check to make sure the batches are still good, the medication
has not expired.
Right, because you don't want to put it down and then when it comes time to you turn the flashlight on, it's not working.
Right.
As it relates to the flashlights as well, you want to remind persons when it's not been used for a long time to take out the batches.
Right.
Because once they're inside the device, sometimes it corrodes and damages the batches, damages the instrument as well. So in checking your emergency kits, it also keeps that in mind as well. So if you say maybe once every 2 months, once every 3 months, or however regularly you want to check it, in checking the kit, it keeps it in mind. Oh yeah, drop, cover, hold, or preparing for any type of disaster in eventuality.
All right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We want preparedness, disaster preparedness, to become a lifestyle, a way of life. What she said, as Desmar said, muscle memory.
Yes.
To do it without thinking.
Right.
Create a kit, create a family plan. Make sure that all the things in your kit are up to date, they're useful, and when you won't need to wonder, oh my God, what happened when you are in the middle of the situation, and then you can't rely on it. That's not what we want. Just like how we are always prepared for hurricanes, we need to get earthquakes, tsunamis, and the like up on that same level. And I mean, the information is there. And if you'd like to reach out to ODPEM, you can call them at 906-967-425, and you can make contact and have them come and make some kind of presentation or demonstration. I'm sure the outreach is always there, always available. All right, you can follow them on all social media at ODPEM. I found them, it was really easy.
Yes.
Now, on odpem.org.jm, that's their website. You can find all information there. It's very, very, very useful website. Lots of information, very helpful when I was researching this topic for our interview today. So you can get there's a wealth of information, and you really have you have all you need to create a plan, to create just raise your level of awareness to such that you will be able to successfully navigate any kind of emergency situation. I just want to say thank you to Vanessa Johnson, saying great info, so she's appreciating. And to Elizabeth B, great words of wisdom. Thanks, JS, for this very useful info. Thank you for tuning in. And we love when you watch. We love when you send in the questions in the comments. We really do appreciate it. This is your show after all. And we're just glad that both of you were able to come and share the information with members of the public so they could be, edified.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
All right, and with that said, it is time for us to wrap. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. And if you sent in a question, not to worry, we will be going through afterwards. And feel free to send in the questions afterwards, even after this live video ends, because the communication doesn't end. We can still get through to you, contact, and share the information that you need. Remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. So if there's anyone you'd like to have in studio, let us know, and we'll try as best as possible to have that person in studio soon. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Jamaica Information Service to see who will be in studio next. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.